This is the Ted Wallison Podcast. Brought to you by Halenda's, the meat people. Enjoy their award-winning products at selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortino's, and Foodland locations. Halenda's, the way sausage should taste. And Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And now, here's Ted Wallison.
If you're a fan of Toronto Blue Jays baseball on television, you'll recognize my next guest for her role as a sideline reporter. She regularly provides us with a valuable insight and in-depth interviews with not only baseball players, but insiders in the industry as well. And this all takes place on Sportsnet Television's Toronto Blue Jays broadcasts. Hazel Mae, how are you?
I am great. I mean, when you reached out to me, I was tickled pink because it's been forever since the two of us worked together.
Yes. And we should point this out. And I mentioned this to a friend the other day. He said, you know, Hazel? I said, yeah, we worked together years ago. And I think this would have been like early 2000s.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. It was at CFRB in Toronto.
Yeah.
And you were the receptionist at the station.
That's right. It was, it was a full-time gig, but I was waiting tables at night, trying to figure out how to get into the sports business. And God love him, the late, great Bill Stevenson, and I would talk sports when he would come in the morning. And then, Teddy, you know that little doorway, the stairwell where you guys would enter, come and go, because you guys never took the elevator. During his lunch hour, he would stop at that door and say, Hazel, you know what to do. And he would leave for lunch. And that meant when someone would call and ask for the sports department, I would say, good morning, CFRB. I'd put them on hold. I'd wait a minute. I'd adjust my voice a little bit and pick it up and say, good morning, sports. How can I help you? And if they were looking for Bill specifically, I'd say, he was on lunch. But if it was just a random question about the Leafs or, anything in particular, because as you know, back then there was no social media, Bill trusted me enough to, give him the answer. So yeah, it was a wonderful place to work. And you guys were very kind to me. And I just adore you.
Grampy, we used to call him. Grampy was just such a special individual. I did not realize that you had that kind of a rapport going on with him. That's a great story. But
yeah.
Let's go back way before that. Let's go back to the beginning here. You were born in the city of Tagbilaran. Did I get that right?
The syllable in the synopsis is a little wrong. It's Tagbilaran.
Tagbilaran in the Philippines.
Yeah, in the Philippines. Yeah.
City of about 100,000+ people. The city of friendship, they call it.
Yeah.
How long did you live there?
I was born there. I was there till about, I'm going to say 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. My father left us for maybe 18 months or so to immigrate to Toronto because he had a sister that sponsored him. Yeah. And so after a year doing odds and ends, kind of finding an apartment to live in, he sent for us with the money that he had saved together to bring us to Toronto. And it was, the best gift he could have ever done for us. And so I've been in Toronto, raised here for, oh my gosh, decades. It's been a long time. 1975, I think, is when I arrived here in Toronto to start our lives.
And what part of the city did you live in?
My father, we were in, I think Jameson Avenue area, Lakeshore and, Lakeshore and Jameson area.
So Roncesvalles.
Yeah, I guess that's where it is now.
Parkdale area.
Yes, I guess that's where it is now.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to high school at Pope John Paul II, Military Trail in Scarborough. We moved to Scarborough years after. Mm-hmm. And then after high school, we picked up and moved to Durham region. And then from there, I think we all kind of dispersed and got our own places and full-time jobs and, got married and kind of went on our merry way. But yeah, we went from Scarborough to Durham and Pickering. And then from there, everybody just kind of started their own lives.
You were an athlete in school, in high school?
I was. I loved sports. I played, volleyball, basketball, soccer, tennis, softball. I mean, I did a little bit of everything. I loved floor hockey in gym class. I tried out for, the cheerleading squad, but didn't fare too well because I was more interested in what was happening on the field than in the sidelines. Yeah. I don't think I was the greatest cheerleader because I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention. I wanted to see what was going on the field. Yeah. And, people ask me, how did you get into sports? And, God love my dad, who, when he first came to this country, knew no English, turned on the TV, got hooked on Leaf games, and picked up the language from watching sports. And, back then it was such a treat to have one television in the household. And that was always on some type of sporting event. And that's how Dad really passed on the passion of sports to all of us, and how he learned English and how he, kind of wanted to be part of the community and kind of assimilate into his newfound country. So it was really born out of, trying to be part of the community.
Right. Speaking with Hazel Mae, you attended York University, and did you study broadcasting there? Were you part of the broadcasting? I don't understand the connection there. It was hard to
here's the connection. There's really no connection. I started going to University of Toronto at Scarborough campus, and I wanted to get into broadcasting because someone told me I could get into sports events for free if I was part of the media. Honest to God, I was like, what do you mean? I don't have to pay? They're like, well, if you're part of the media, they give you a really snazzy thing called a media pass. Yeah. So I started calling universities around, and it just so happened that York University had a female sports director on CHRY 105.5 FM. And it's a great story because it's Sanaya Saperji. She does a lot of coverage for minor league hockey. She was a sports director, and God love her. I had zero experience, and I just thought, if a woman was the head of the sports department, she would give me a shot at it. And that's what she did. So I was doing sports updates for York University. And I thought, why not take a couple of night classes since I was there? So I took literally a communications course at night and did that for the campus radio station, just so I could get some type of experience in media.
Right. So you end up at CFRB, as I mentioned, as a receptionist.
Yes.
You connect with Bill Stevenson, sports director at the time, who becomes very helpful. How did you get into Sportsnet radio?
So while I was waiting tables at the Keg restaurant, who, lovely, lovely company to work for, I met a gentleman who was working at Sportsnet, and he was like, you know a lot of sports. Why don't you get into broadcasting? And I said, well, I would love to. How do I do that? So he had me audition for Jim Lang at Sportsnet Ontario. And if people remember years back, Teddy, Sportsnet Ontario provided short sports updates on the radio for various affiliates. It's no longer in play, but I did that for like $75 a week. And I would come in and I would write my own script. And then it so happens Sportsnet's past president, Scott Moore, was in the building. He saw me in the office and said, who's that? And someone said, she's the new radio girl. And he said, well, we're looking to make a change on Sportsnet morning show. See if she'd be interested in auditioning. And this is how dumb and so out of touch I was, Teddy, when it comes to broadcasting. Someone said, hey, the president wants to know if you want to audition for the morning show. And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, well, how much does it cost? like, how much is it going to cost me? And he looked at me and he said, no, he wants you to audition for the show. So I did. I guess I did really well. He called me up to his office and said, you've got potential. How would you like to, host the morning show? And back then it was called Sportsnet Central AM. And that's really how things started. It was really something that kind of fell into place. I was at the right place at the right time. I happened to know a little bit about different sports. They were looking for a change. So kind of all the stars aligned. So I was really lucky.
And then your next move is to Massachusetts, to Boston, NESN, the New England Sports Network.
Yeah.
2004. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking to myself, okay, here's Hazel Mae, a woman.
Uh-huh.
Not how observant of me. From Canada,
yes.
who's Asian, and she's going to a city known for football, baseball, hockey, and predominantly you're going to be focusing in on baseball. They must be thinking, well, what the hell does she know about baseball?
Oh, man, do I have stories. Well, Tom Werner is the chairman of the Boston Red Sox, who, for people that, follow, he created, Teddy, as you know, the Bill Cosby Show, Third Rock from the Sun, Roseanne. So Tom Werner was watching the Red Sox play at Rogers Center back in 2004, spring of 2004. The cameras happened to be kind of, I guess, looking at the press box for some reason. He sees me, reaches out to Glenn Geffner, who at the time was the director of PR for the Red Sox, and said, who's the young lady that sitting, off to your right? And he said, she is Hazel Mae, and she does a weekly magazine show for Sportsnet called the J Zone, focusing on the Blue Jays. And he said, well, we would like to audition her for something on NESN. And the director looks at me and says, how would you like to fly to Boston and audition for a new morning show anchor spot? And I said, sure. And that's how that happened. And believe me, everything that you said, Asian, from Toronto, not even born in the country. I took a lot of heat when I first got there because, New England, as you well know, very cliquey, very loyal to their homegrown broadcasters. So I show up and a lot of the questions were, what's a woman, Asian, from Canada know about the Red Sox, who, if you know anything about that fan base, season tickets are willed down from generation to generation. So, and here I am. So I really had to not that, I wouldn't work hard, but I had to work. I mean, so hard to win these people over. And the fact that they broke the curse in 2004 and I was part of the media at that time, I think really played into my favor. So that's how it's been really crazy. A lot of luck and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to kind of, show the Red Sox fan base that you kind of knew what you were doing. You were just as passionate as they were, and that you wanted to be part of the community.
So what was the most difficult? What did you have to fight the hardest? Was it the sexism? Was it the racism? Was it the fact that you were Canadian or a combination?
I think the first thing is, when you're from Canada, she should be covering the Bruins, not the Red Sox. Right. And then
we had already won 2 World Series.
Right. Like that. They always forget that. They always forget that part. But I think, and if you know a little bit about the Boston Red Sox history, they were the last major league team to accept an African-American, player. So that, that region has always been a little slower to be accepting. And I'm not to say that 2004 they weren't, but there was always that, there are not a lot, let's be honest, Teddy, there's not a lot of Filipino Canadians hanging out in New England in 2004.
No.
So no, it was shocking, really. So, you get past that by showing them that, you're, I guess, quote unquote, worthy of their fandomship and that you're trustworthy and can represent their beloved Red Sox, well. And it really, the sexism, sure. When I first got there, there were the older scribes that may not necessarily have even said hello to me when I would say hello to them. Mm-hmm. Back in 2004, and I can say his name, Dan Shaughnessy, because we're very, I adore the man. But Dan Shaughnessy and I were standing in front of the Red Sox dugout in 2004 when the Red Sox were down to the Yankees in the ALCS 03, and there was no shot in hell that they were going to come back. And Dan Shaughnessy looked at me and said, so, looks like this is going to be a short series. And I looked up to him and I said, well, 03 is bad, but if they win tonight and if they've got, Curt Schilling in the next game and blah, and they can win that, it'll be 3-2 and then it'll be 3-3. And he looked at me and he said, you obviously are not from this area, meaning, meaning
too positive.
That, absolutely, because they had never seen a World Series title in 86 years. And here I am, fresh from Toronto, who saw the Blue Jays win back-to-back World Series, and they looked at me like I had three heads. But believe me, even now, I'd like to say things are better, and they are. There will always be that, why is she here? How did she get here? You'll always have that. But I think at the end of the day, if you show them that, you're a hard worker and you're kind, I think at some point they start to accept you.
After your stint, we're speaking with Hazel Mae, after your stint in Boston at NESN, you went from there to Major League Baseball.
Right. So
why did you leave?
Well, Tom Werner, the chairman of the Red Sox, happened to be on the board of governors for this soon to be launched network called Major League Baseball Network, MLB Network. And Tom remembered me. Now, he didn't know if I wanted the job or not, but he said that there is this opportunity, I'd hate to lose you on the Red Sox side, but why don't you, try MLB Network. And Tony Petitti at the time, who's no longer with the commissioner's office, he was the number 2 guy for CBS under Sean McManus. And they had Tony start and launch this network. He reached out to my agent and said, how would you like to help launch this network? And, I had been in Boston for a few years and I thought, man, moving to New York City, that's kind of cool. I didn't have any kids. I wasn't married. I can kind of up and leave and try this opportunity. So I went out there. Yeah, absolutely. I went out there to meet with Tony Petitti and he took me to Secaucus. And this is crazy. He takes me to Secaucus. There's to an abandoned studio, MSNBC's old abandoned studios. So we walk in there and there's just, these really old, decrepit laptop computers, a disheveled MSNBC set from years ago because it's abandoned. And Tony Petitti looks at me and says, this is going to be MLB Network. Just picture this. We're going to have, a fake kind of a ballpark for demonstrations. We'll have a studio night show. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I got a pretty good gig with the Red Sox right now. And I'm looking at this old abandoned building and he's telling me just to picture this and, to leave NESN to come to this. Obviously they hadn't broken ground on the network, but, I loved his vision. I loved that he said, we're going to be the place for, baseball fans around the world. This is going to be where they tune in. So that is why I left. A lot of people were like, oh, she got fired. Why would she leave the Red Sox? It's like, no, I wanted to go launch this network. And, it was great until I got homesick.
Yeah. So you were there for
4 years.
3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
And then back to Toronto. And how did that come about?
So Scott Moore's wife, is a good friend of mine. And so when I got married, I left, I actually got married in Toronto. I was still living in New York City. I invited, Scott Moore and his wife. And during the reception, Scott Moore came up to the head table and said, how would you like to come back home? And I didn't even think of it because I was so happy in New York. But at the time, my husband and I were thinking about having a family, and to have our family in New York City, where I didn't really have a support system because everybody was in Toronto. That's when I really kind of thought about leaving. But he said, we'd love to have you back at Sportsnet. You could come back home. You can raise your family here. Just think about it. And that's really when I first kind of thought, geez, can I really do this? Leave such a great gig at MLB Network to come home to have a family and to be surrounded by my family, who everybody was in Toronto. So that's how that came about. And Scott really brought me home. And it's been a wonderful decision. And, every now and then you kind of think, what if I kind of stuck it out at MLB Network because, the network is doing so great. But when I look at, the people I work with at Sportsnet and the Blue Jays and the team over the last couple of years, it's really exciting. I'm really, really lucky, very grateful.
Ted Woloshyn returns in a moment.
Hey, let me take a moment to tell you about my friends at Halenda's. They are the meat people. I've been a fan of their products for years now, and without a doubt, they make some of the best sausage in Ontario. They are multiple award winners, having captured the Ontario's finest meat competition's coveted Award of Excellence on 3 occasions, in addition to dozens of individual product awards. Halenda's has also received the Grand Champion ribbon at the past 2 Royal Winter Fair's ready-to-eat meat snack competitions. So whether you're preparing a charcuterie board or a full-blown sit-down dinner for your friends or family, you'll find Halenda's award-winning products at fine meat shops throughout the province, now including selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortino's, and Foodland stores, along with their 7 Halenda's locations. Their barbecued kielbasa is my favorite. On a fresh bun with horseradish, it is out of this world. But don't just take my word for it. Judge for yourself. On your barbecue, in your kitchen, or straight from the refrigerator. Halenda's, the way sausage should taste. Okay, here we go down to visit our friend Tom Mahalik at Tom's Place, 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market in Toronto. Tom, of course, has the best selection of suits in the city of Toronto. But now that the winter is upon us, Tom, you need to put something on top of that beautiful suit when you go outside, and you've got some great coats.
We have some great coats that are 50 off. I just like to tell you guys a little story. I was going to switch the car at night, but then I changed my mind. I leave early in the morning, and I said to my wife, don't worry, darling, I will move the cars. Well, I went and I moved the cars. Took me about an hour. I had my sport jacket on, my beautiful sweater, and my scarf. But it wasn't enough. I was freezing. So in between trying to move the cars, I said, I got to go back to the house and grab one of those coats, one of those fabulous Tom's Place coats that are 50% off. Huge selection of coats that are 50% off, and they're only $249. I grabbed one of those coats. I put it on. I went back to the car. I didn't know how to reverse it. It took me another half an hour. But it was fine because I had my coat, I had my sweater, I had my scarf, I had my beautiful sport jacket, and a warm pair of pants. So it didn't bother me. So my wife asked me in the morning, Tom, what took you so long? Well, I said, I didn't know how to reverse it. I'll never do it again. I will listen to my wife, and I will switch while she's still there.
Tom's Place. Drop by. Coats, suits, jackets, sweaters, everything you need for the cold weather. 190 Baldwin, the heart of Kensington Market.
Now back to Ted and his guest.
Hazel Mae is my guest. How did the Blue Jay job happen? Because when you didn't come back to the Jays job, you came back to work at Sportsnet.
Absolutely. I mean, I had put my baseball kind of quote unquote life behind me. When Scott Moore asked me to come back, he gave me the option. Would you like to host the highlight show at 6:30, which is the pregame into our Blue Jays coverage, or the 10 o'clock primetime show? And I said, you know what? If you're giving me the option, I'd love to do 6:30 because I'm kind of done the late nights. I wanted to be home for dinner. My husband and I wanted to start a family. I said, so 6:30. So I did that. And then they moved Tim and Sid into my spot. And I ended up I was doing some some weird news updates for Tim and Sid. And then it just so happened that Scott Moore said, listen, you need to go back to baseball. And, how about trying the Blue Jays thing? And I thought, oh my God, I'm so tired of being at the ballpark until midnight. I mean, he's like, just give it a try. So that was 2015, which was a great time to try it. As you know, they went to the ALCS 2015 and 2016. And I guess I did a good enough job that they just kept me there. I've been there ever since, and lucky enough to have the off season to spend with my family and to do, other things if I want to do. So, now that I'm kind of rehashing this, Teddy, it's been a long journey. I mean, to be in this business as you and I have been for decades. I mean, for me, it's going to be going into my 22nd season in the industry, considering how the landscape has changed. You and I have been very lucky to be kicking around.
Yeah, you got that right. When you came on board with the Jays, seeing the players every day, how did they react to your presence? And did you have any mentors within the organization, people who helped you sort of get a feeling for the team and how things operated?
I mean, I was really lucky because by the time I returned to the sidelines, a lot of the players had recognized me from MLB Network. So I had kind of this layer of credibility already.
Sure.
So, that was a little easier. And I had interviewed quite a number of them for MLB Network. And they knew that I was originally from Toronto. So there wasn't so much, trying to convince them that, this is where I wanted to be. And I knew baseball and, I was a hard worker. They had seen some of my work. But I will say the first time when I hosted J Zone on the magazine show, my first go around was Sportsnet. The people that were there, and I'm going to give you names and you're going to go, yep. I mean, Richard Griffin and Bob Elliott and,
great sports
Ken Fidlin, Steve Milton from the Hamilton Spectre. I mean, these guys could have been just what happened with me in Boston, where no one really said hello to me and kind of looked at me like, what's she doing here? But they were very kind to me. And that kind of gave me confidence to think, hey, maybe I do belong. And because, Toronto and Canada was more inclusive and such a diverse city, maybe they would open their arms to an Asian baseball person and not just someone who did the news, traffic, and weather that looked like me, right? Because there's Michelle Tafoya and there was Melissa Stark, but who in their right mind would put an Asian, a Filipino Canadian on, Major League Baseball? It was taking a risk. And as you know, this was all before the Me Too movement. You're seeing a lot more now, but back in, my day, it was a lot tougher.
See, but when you came back to Toronto, Hazel, in 2011, Toronto was a very welcoming city. I mean, we've got 140 languages that are spoken in Toronto.
Yeah.
People are open to all nationalities, all cultures. But things changed when the pandemic hit, especially for people from Asian descent.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people being struck and pushed and violated in the streets for absolutely no reason.
Yeah, it was one of those, it was kind of like a wake up call because like you said, growing up, it was very welcoming. I mean, this was my city, my community, my country. And then to see what was happening, the Asian hate south of the border, it was almost kind of like, that's the US. But when you heard and saw incidents here in Canada, that was like, well, whoa, wait a minute, that doesn't happen here. And I found myself, I actually remember picking up the phone and calling my mom. And I thought, because they like to go for their morning walks and stuff. And I said, hey, Mom, there's, not good people out there right now because of COVID and they're blaming Asians. And, I would be careful. And my mom was like, what do you mean? And I said, Mom, like, just be careful when you go out on a walk with Dad, because, the environment, the climate right now, there's a lot of hate towards Asians. It was definitely obviously misplaced, but it really, I want to say it was scary, but it was so disappointing and so heartbreaking for me because it was happening here at my home.
Yeah.
So it was a really tough time. You add that to, the pandemic and being scared of COVID, but then you're scared of people, somehow attacking you. And I would go out for a walk with my son, and my son is half Filipino, but he has my features. He has, my almond eyes, and he's got this small nose. And all I could think of as I was, taking him for a walk during that time was, is this safe? Like, it was such a weird thing to even enter my mind, but it was a really scary time, as you know.
And people would think, well, why would Hazel Mae worry? I mean, this is a woman who's beloved in the city. My God,
right.
68,000 people follow you on Twitter.
Well, here's the thing, right, Teddy? So if
but nobody can see you because you're wearing
correct.
a mask.
I'm wearing my mask. I don't have the 10 pounds of makeup on. I don't have the, fake lashes and the hair sprayed hair. I've got my hair in a ponytail. And when I'm not wearing any eye makeup, my eyes are even smaller, more almond shaped. I've got my mask on, and I'm, with my son. And, those thoughts, unfortunately, come to your mind. It's because they don't see, oh, hey, it looks like Hazel Mae from, the sideline reporter for the Blue Jays. They see an Asian woman with her son during a time where there's so much, hate towards Asians that you don't think, oh, I'm sure someone recognizes me. No one's going to want to assault me. No, they see an Asian woman with her son in a time where, they're being blamed for COVID.
Yeah. Let's talk about your family if we can. I don't want to get too personal because it is personal. But you're married to Kevin Barker. He's a broadcaster and a former major league player. 5 years in major leagues: Milwaukee, San Diego, Cincinnati.
It's such a cheesy love story, as you know.
Well, that's not cheesy. But the question in my mind is when you come home after doing a broadcast, after you've shared your comments with the audience and you've asked questions of various players, does your husband ever turn to you and say, what kind of question was that? Why did you say that? Why didn't you say this? You don't know about this. Well, what about this? You missed
no.
Here he is.
I'm lucky. First of all, Kevin is a wonderful father and husband. But when it comes to baseball, and people ask us, like, do you guys talk about anything other than baseball at home? And it's like, no, it's actually just baseball and football. What he does say is, I like to kind of tap into, hey, if I ask this guy this question as a player, would you take that the wrong way? And what Kevin would do is Kevin would say, maybe not ask him that way because guys take it this way. Like it's so handy to have him around because I will say, hey, I'm about to ask Vladdy this question. And he's like, he'll tell me, good question. I don't know. Guys don't really like to talk about that. Or, guys don't, think that's really all that important. I use him as kind of, bounce my questions off. And he always tells people, and it's so wrong. He tells people that I know baseball more than he does because he knows how to play baseball, but then I apparently know all the intricacies around the game, which I disagree with because I think no matter how hard I study, I talk to people, having never played a Major League Baseball game, there will be obviously things that I will never really understand because I never played the game. That's where Kevin comes in. And I ask him, I asked Ross Stripling this question, Kevin. He gave me this weird answer. Why would he tell me that? And then Kevin would say, well, as players, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And the interesting thing about Kevin is I have my sources and he has his sources. And I know we have basically the same sources when it comes to information, but he never gives up his guys. I think as a player, there's got to be some type of code where, I will say to him, hey, did you know that this is what happened, da, 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 da. And he'll say, yeah, I knew that last week. And I'm like, hey, dude, how about telling me about it? And for some reason, he's like, guys, we just don't talk about that. Like even though he's been out of the game for many years, he still has this, loyalty, there's like a player's code where you kind of keep your things to yourself. And right. A lot of times that's just aggravating and frustrating for me because I want him to spill the beans so that I can report it. But no, he sticks to his guns.
Speaking to Toronto Blue Jays sideline reporter Hazel Mae, are we ever going to see a female play baseball in the major leagues?
Oh, geez. That's a really good question. Honestly, I think. I
mean, it's not one of those sports where you need to be big because you get beaten up in the corners like hockey or like football.
Yeah. I mean, I think. Oh, that's a really good question. No one's ever asked me. People will ask me, will you ever see a woman call play-by-play or be an analyst? And, now we're seeing Melanie Newman with the Orioles and we're seeing, Jenny Kavnar with the Rockies, which is great. But man, that's a really good question, Teddy. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, could I ever see a woman playing shortstop with Vladimir Guerrero to her right? And, Bo Bichette. Oh, sorry. And, second, we don't really have a second baseman anymore.
No, we don't. Not anymore, no.
Right now, the Blue Jays could use, Kevin Biggio. I don't know. You're right. It isn't a sport. It's supposed to be a quote unquote non-contact sport. Right. So it's not like, unless there was some type of, maybe, like a female and a male kind of league, maybe a separate league where you had males and females in some other branch of Major League Baseball. I don't know. I don't know if I ever thought of that. That's a really good question.
Are there any officials in Major League Baseball, female officials, umpires or first base?
There is not. However, we are seeing coaches on the coaching staff, but officiating, we have not yet had a woman. Now we have, head athletic trainers. As you know, we've got women on the coaching staff, but no, not officials. That's interesting. No.
You have a 9-year-old son that you mentioned. Is he into baseball?
Yes. Oh, sadly, no. Because, okay. all his friends are, big Raptors fans. And of course, you're in Toronto and you grew up. A lot of his friends are hockey fans, Leaf fans here in Toronto. But, he'll watch a game with us every now and then. I remember a really funny story where when he was maybe 2 or 3, Kevin's a lefty. So he, really wanted our son to be left-handed. Because he thought, a lefty pitcher, left-handed first baseman would be great if he ever wanted to get in baseball. And we were watching television. We looked over at him. He picked a ball up with his left hand, and Kevin kind of grabbed my hand, and we were like, oh my gosh. And then he did the transfer to his right hand, and then threw the ball with his right hand, and Kevin's face just sunk like he had just lost his best friend. So yeah, we hope that maybe, he's 9. Unfortunately, the COVID, the pandemic has kind of taken a couple of years off from any chance to play T-ball, but I'm hoping to introduce him to organized baseball leagues when they can safely do so. But unfortunately for me and for my husband, he's big into the Raptors and the Leafs right now.
Now, I have a question for you, which is probably stupid, but you know well enough. That's okay.
Yes.
You're down on the sidelines there, and sometimes when the guys win a big game, I mean, there's excitement. There's there's the traditional pouring of the Gatorade over the players and over the coaches, and occasionally you get hit. Either collateral damage or it's done on purpose.
Yes,
you wear really nice clothing, and we'll get into that in a second as well. Who pays for the dry cleaning?
You know what? I do, and I know, but it's not because, Rogers and Rogers Sportsnet and the Blue Jays have not, say they're not going to. To me, it's just, one of the hazards of, the job. And, right. I'm lucky enough that I've got, a clothing allowance that allows me to wear some things. So, the least I could do is just go dry clean my clothes. Look, if I ever, handed in my receipts, I don't think it'd ever be declined. It's just easier for me to go across the street to the dry cleaners and hand it off to the dry cleaners, who, by the way, is a huge baseball fan. So every time they, have a walk-off win and she sees me get drenched, I walk in the morning and the first thing she says is, "I've been expecting you."
That's funny. Tell me about Hazel Mae Designs. Is that still a thing? Because again, as I research these things, sometimes it's hard to tell whether these things still exist or not.
Yeah. So we're 13 years in, and unfortunately, obviously, the COVID, we took a huge hit. So I'm not designing new clothes. I'm still kind of selling what we have on the website. And it really all came about that, 12 years ago, I was having trouble looking for a certain look of a dress, which is kind of a sheath dress, solid colors, because they're good for TV. Mm-hmm. Had to be a little bit stretchy because I'm sitting down, standing up, running around in my heels. And it was, I could find it here and I can find another one there, but there was never one-stop shopping where I can go to one place and find all these dresses that I wanted. And my husband said, well, after a tough day shopping, he said, well, why don't you make your own? And I looked at him and I said, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say, with someone with no, fashion background or business background. And, I reached out to a few people in the fashion industry that knew what they were doing and came up with this. And really, honestly, Teddy, it was more for me. So I had something to wear. Yeah. And then when I would wear it, some of the women around work, complimented me and said, where did you get that? I said, actually, I designed it. And, they said, maybe you should sell it. And I thought, maybe that sounds great. So I started just selling it. And look, I'm not looking to be the next Calvin Klein. And I just thought to myself, if someone else was looking for this type of dress, maybe they can just go to the website and see all that kind of style in different colors. And maybe, they'll buy a couple. And again, I wasn't looking to, retire off this dress line. Oh, right. It was something, it was something for me. And if you happen to like one of the dresses, it was available to you. So it's been a really nice experience. I feel like I can say that I've done that, kind of check that off my bucket list. Right. And I don't know how much longer I can go with it because things are getting busier, but I'm happy that I can say I did something.
Now, are the designs aimed at a certain demographic, or are they available to a wide demographic?
No, they're available to everybody. I get more women who aren't your typical size 0, size 2 reaching out, asking me for, a wider options for sizes. But again, that costs money and time. And right now I've just kind of what we have right now in inventory is what we're selling on the website. But it's been very satisfying because it was something that was totally outside the box for me, knew nothing about, I was drawing stick figures when I was trying to explain, what I wanted in a dress. And to see the website and to see some of the women who have bought some of the dresses and have responded and said they really enjoyed it has been really, really satisfying for me.
So I have an idea, and not only yourself as a spokesperson for your clothing line, but you need another spokesperson of an older demographic, and I have an idea for you.
Okay.
The older woman who sits behind home plate in the second row.
Yes, home plate lady, I think is her name.
Who is she?
Yes, I don't know.
Have you met her?
I have not had the pleasure to actually speak with her, but because when we do the pregame show on the field, she gets carted via golf cart behind us to her seat from left field. And so I've never had the chance to really say hello. I just, just like you, I've just heard of her just from social media and from seeing her at every game. But no, I don't know her.
It's a fascinating character, huh?
I mean, look, hey, what a way, if you could spend, your nights at the ballpark, second row behind home plate. Yeah. Hey, I'd do it too.
Exactly. Hazel Mae is my guest. She's the sideline reporter for the Toronto Blue Jays, who are currently, like every other Major League Baseball team, in the midst of a lockout.
Right.
It's so early. I mean, when you call it a lockout in February, people start, chewing their nails. But when you call it a lockout in December,
right,
people aren't really.
No.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I heard.
First of all, are you concerned, and which side do you sit on?
No. Well, first of all, I'm not concerned. Like you said, is because I don't even think I heard that they were meeting this week regarding non-economic issues, which, is really nothing, to be honest with you, and that they weren't going to even get down to business until January. I have every, I'm an optimist to begin with. I feel like there will not be any games lost. But like you said, games don't start till the end of March, early April. So where's the rush, right? So I think until it gets down to, the end of January, early February, people already think spring training, and the players think spring training is too long. So even if these negotiations kind of dip into the few weeks of spring training, I don't think it's the end of the world. Guys, Teddy, back in the days when we first started covering baseball, would, want to get into shape when they got to spring training. These days, guys are already working out. So it's not like they need to go to spring training to get into shape. So even if, the lockout goes into the first few days or first few weeks of spring training, I don't think that's a big deal. Like you said, there is no sense of urgency right now because games aren't happening. I think what both sides are going to do is they're going to enjoy the holidays as best they can and get back to the bargaining table maybe mid-January and start quote unquote real negotiations. I mean, at the end of the day, players seem to feel that the last time they agreed to the CBA, looking back at it now with just the billions and billions of money the game and the owners have made, they feel like they're going to stick to their guns because, they feel like they didn't sign such a great deal back then. And they want, their position in what they want for this CBA. It's funny because, you talk to some of the players and we're not backing down this time. We're not backing down. And all I think is, well, you didn't back down last time because you signed the deal. You had to have been happy with something. Yeah. Otherwise you wouldn't have signed the CBA that expired. So, who knows, social media will play into it, trying to get the fans on, their side. Who knows? I am going to play Switzerland, Teddy. I am on the fence because once this thing gets going, I don't want to be the one. Hey, you said this about us. You said that. Yeah. So I'm going to be Switzerland.
I was just going to say, Hazel, you're in a bit of an awkward situation to begin with because you have to remain friends with the players, or at least have a good rapport with them.
Absolutely.
You're married to a former broadcaster. You work for the company that owns the team.
Correct.
That you cover.
Correct. It's interesting because we actually received an email from Major League Baseball, I would say maybe a few days, maybe a week leading to the December 1st deadline, saying that, come lockout, we are not allowed to conduct any interviews as rights holders and as home broadcasters. We are not allowed to hold any interviews, even via Zoom, with the players that are on the current 40-man roster. No Zoom interviews, no features, which is a hit to us because this is the time where we go and film any, documentaries, any special features that we air during our spring training broadcasts or in the, first few days of the season. So we are not allowed to talk to them, reach out to them, nothing. So you're right. We, the broadcasters of the Jays on television, are in a really precarious, position right now because what kind of homework can you do? We're not allowed to reach out to them, not to talk to them. There is no Winterfest where sometimes we catch up with the players before heading down to spring training. We don't even know how much spring training there will be. So it's going to be an interesting, few months, to say the least.
What are your thoughts about the Jays season coming up? I mean, we've lost a couple of key players. We mentioned Marcus Semien being one of them, of course.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, those of us that have been following the team, it was really slim chance to keep him. But with the moves that Ross Atkins made prior to the lockout, and what I heard is they're not even finished yet. So once this lockout is over, expect a lot more signings. I mean, they're all in. And if you didn't know that when they signed the extension to Jose Barrios, you definitely know that. They got Kevin Gausman. I'm telling you, they were in on some of the big name free agents. I'm not going to say who, but just to kind of give everybody the idea that it's not yet finished. They've got more to do.
You know what? For your sake, Hazel, I hope they have a great team. I'd love to see them win the World Series again. And I'd love to see your tiny little fingers wearing one of those big fat World Series.
I hope so.
You walk on with your left side hanging down.
I hope so. I hope they share the wealth. And I hope to see you at the ballpark. So make sure you reach out if you ever want to come down.
I will do that. It's been so great talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time. All the best to you. Have the merriest of Christmas and the best of 2022 to your husband, your son, and your entire family.
Thank you, Teddy. I mean, Merry Christmas to you. This has been such a treat reconnecting with you because you were one of the kindest people when I was over at CFRB, and I truly enjoyed you. Thank you.
The Ted Wallacham Podcast has been brought to you by Halenda's, the Meat People. Enjoy their award-winning products at selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortinos, and Foodland locations. Halenda's, the way sausage should taste. And Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. The Ted Wallacham Podcast is produced by Joey Roselli. Technical production by Paul Gatt. Music by Bike Thieves. I'm Becky Coles. Submit your questions and comments to ted@twmedia.ca.